Hi, I'm Joe with Gramophone, and we appreciate you spending time with us. Today's topic, the HiFi Rose RA280. So this is a very powerful amplifier that we would say way outperforms its compact size. It's available in either traditional black finish or in this cool looking silver. And it's got a retro look, but a lot of modern features inside. Let's see if it might be the right product for you. So the first thing you'll want to know about the RA280 is that it has what I would refer to as an analog sound quality from what at its core is a digital amplifier. This is a very powerful amp that's got twin mono blocks inside. They did a very good job of laying out the amplifier. So it's 250 watts into an 8 ohm load, 250 watts into a 4 ohm load, and again from twin mono blocks. This amplifier runs cool. So that taken into consideration with its very compact size is really going to be a plus for some people, because amplifiers this powerful tend to be behemoths. It has, by the way, a retro look to the front panel, but inside it's all totally modern. And in fact, why don't we just take a quick look at the front panel and see what you get there. So in looking at the front panel, it's a very clean layout, and it's pretty conventional, but with a couple things that I think you'll appreciate. You can see you've got the volume control here on the right side of the amplifier, and your selection of source is over here on the left. The switches have a very nice, solid, yet smooth feel to them. You can actually hear a click when you switch. A couple things I wanted to mention are, here you've got your tone controls for bass and treble, and that is totally defeatable. And you probably noticed that the lights went out when we defeated the tone controls, so that you're getting, at that point, completely bypassed tone and just a pure signal. But also, there are twin meters here that you can dim, or you can defeat the lights entirely. Sometimes people really don't like the look of lights on a front panel. If that does bother you, you can control it, or again, dim the lights entirely on the VU meters. So now let's talk a little bit about GaN-FET technology. We've mentioned already that this is an extremely powerful amplifier that's both compact and runs cool. This is what HiFi Rose calls a Class AD amplifier. So it is a GaN-FET-based amplifier. In other words, it doesn't use traditional silicon-based field effect transistors. These are gallium nitride field effect transistors. So what? Well, the benefit is that gallium nitride field effect transistors, which are much, much newer, because silicon FETs have been around for, I think, at least 4 decades or so. Gallium nitride field effect transistors are able to operate literally at 10 times the speed of the older silicon ones. So sometimes you will hear people say, oh, it's a Class D amplifier, it can't possibly sound good. That may have been true 20, 25 years ago. I don't think that's true at all today. We've seen a series of amplifiers now from a number of different manufacturers that are based on newer technologies that sound really good. And because these field effect transistors can operate so much faster than the older ones, this has a really good sound quality to it. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. Before we talk about the sound, I want to say a word about the value for money. Again, this amplifier is at $29.95 USD retail here in December of 2024. HiFi Rose's flagship integrated amplifier is the RA180. Now the 180 is even more powerful. It's a 400 watt per channel amplifier, and it offers some really cool features in terms of the way those amplifiers are split up and what you can do with them. But that amplifier also retails for $7,000. So even though this is not an inexpensive amp, I think you get an awful lot of product here if you don't need that extra power and some of the flexibility and features that you get in a 180. This amp is really kind of a bargain, given that it's less than half the money and has basically run flawlessly every speaker that we threw at it. And by the way, we really appreciate that you're on board with us. We love it. If you haven't as yet, please like and subscribe. Click that little bell icon so you're always notified of our upcoming videos. So now let's talk a little bit about what happened when we listened. I think there were 3 things that kind of stood out to us in general as we were listening, and then we'll talk about some of the musical cuts. The first one is, really like all very powerful amplifiers, when you're listening to the RA280, you get this sense of effortlessness when it's playing music. Sometimes it's almost as though you can hear a low-powered amplifier straining when there are peaks and so forth. You don't get that here, both at low volume levels and at higher volume levels. There's this really, again, a sense of effortlessness when you're listening. Second thing is bass notes. It doesn't sound thin. Actually, it sounds like it's got really good control over the bass notes. And those of you who love bass players like I do and drummers like I do will know what I mean when I say you're hearing bass notes that kind of just sound right, nice and taut and clear, so you can distinguish them from each other. The third thing is it has a very pleasing sound stage to it. So B&W 705s, which is a stand mount speaker. We tried some Totem floor mount speakers. This amplifier seems to really have a characteristic of a broad and deep sound stage. And I love that because it has a lot to do with the realism of the music. So when our salesman Mark and I were listening to this amplifier in a system, obviously, the two words that kept coming up were detailed and smooth. Sometimes a lot of detail means an exaggerated high end, which can translate into brightness. We weren't getting that. We listened to I Wish from Stevie Wonder and Stardust from John Coltrane. Again, detailed and smooth, yet also with that tight control of the bass notes we talked about a moment ago. I love Genesis, big fan of that band. 11th Earl of Mar is the lead-off track on Wind and Wuthering. And it's just this big symphonic kind of a piece that they did. And it sounded that way when we listened on the RA280, big and symphonic. Let's talk a little bit about build quality. We mentioned we were talking about the front panel, how you've got this very nice, solid, yet smooth feel to the controls in the front. Well, build quality-wise, I'm telling you, when you pick this amplifier up, you will realize it's no lightweight. This is not a budget-priced amplifier. Everything about it just feels really well built. You also have this aluminum and steel case, which actually acts as the heat sink for the amplifier. It does not generate a ton of heat, but you can see both on the left and on the right, you've got these openings. So compared to almost any other 250 watt aside amplifier into 8 or 4 ohms that I know of, this thing can generate great power, sound wonderful, and not give you any issues with heat. Let's talk a little bit about ease of use. It's a basic 2-channel amplifier, so there's nothing super fancy going on, but they have some nice touches that make it easy. You've seen how simple the front panel is to operate. They give you a nice remote control, which doesn't have 1,000,001 switches on it, but it allows you to, if you want, control power on and off, volume up and down, that sort of thing, and leave your phone for answering phone calls and so forth. But additionally, HiFi Rose has a nice app that you can use that makes the product easy to operate as well. So from an ease of use standpoint, we'd give this one a thumbs up. Now you've also got plenty of connectivity with RA280, so let's turn around and take a look at the back panel here. I love these very solid 5-way binding posts. Just kind of makes you feel good about the quality of the product. Good connectivity here. You've got 3 sets of line inputs, which is nice. You also have a phono input. So any moving magnet phono cartridge, you don't necessarily have to buy a separate phono preamp, although obviously lots of people do want to upgrade the performance of their turntable. So, you can do that if you want, but there's no real need to. And we love seeing a set of balanced inputs as well, because obviously that's going to be the quietest and best sounding way to connect sources. You've got 12-volt triggers so that everything can turn on at the same time. You can turn on other products in your system. You've got a really key feature here with sub out. An awful lot of people wind up not necessarily buying the speaker they really want, but something lesser, which frequently means not quite as good bass response. You can add a subwoofer later that can really make a huge difference, even with a really good speaker. We talked about the binding posts, of course. You actually have a reset here as well. So that's a nice alternative to having to open up a product and get at a fuse. And of course, you can connect an upgraded, let's say, power cable if you want to, although this one's reasonably beefy, the one that comes in the box. Thank you, HiFi Rose. One more thing to add about the amplifier's performance is that it really can handle just about any speaker that you want to throw at it. We tried Focal, Kef, and Bowers and Wilkins, and Totem. It seemed like any speaker we paired with it, we wound up with a good sounding result. I read online about a customer, how pleased he was with his Magnepans, and Magnepans, of course, can be a very challenging load. There may be some speakers out there that you can't run with this amp, but we haven't found it yet. So there's two things that you do want to be aware of with the RA280. The first is, this is an all analog product from the perspective of the preamplifier. So there's no DAC inside here, there's no streaming capability on board. When it comes to adding a DAC streamer, you want to be aware that you've got both balanced and RCA connections on the back, but you will need to add that on. So that differentiates this a little bit from their excellent RS520, which is a somewhat similarly powered amp at 200 watts a side that has all of the DAC and streaming capability you need to have all your digital sources all lined up. I suppose that the benefit to this actually is you get a little bit more flexibility in terms of, do you want to add a super premium DAC streamer or even a super premium separate DAC and separate streamer? Or do you want for your streaming needs to go with something very, very basic because you're more of a turntable analog kind of guy? It's not necessarily a big drawback, but it's something that you need to be aware of. Now, a second thing to be aware of is that this integrated has no AV bypass mode. So if you're a home theater fan, that may matter to you. I think for an awful lot of two-channel fans, it's not going to make any difference at all, but it is just something to be aware of. So who is the customer for this product? If you want a two-channel integrated amplifier, so a one-box solution, it's not going to take up hardly any room at all compared to some of the really powerful solutions that you could get in the two-channel realm, the HiFi Rose RA280 might be exactly what you're looking for. With 250 watts per side into 8 or 4 ohm loads and a really smooth sound quality, this is a great match for almost any pair of speakers that you can think of, and just might then free up some more budget for you to invest somewhere else in your system to get the effect that you want. For more information about HiFi Rose and for all of our fine products, you can go to Gramophone.com. To pick up your RA280, visit Sky by Gramophone. You're always going to get secure checkout, fast and free shipping, straight to your door. We really appreciate you being along for the ride on this video, and we'd love to meet you. So if you can, come visit us at one of our 3 stores, Gaithersburg, Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C., Columbia, and here in Timonium. If you come here to Timonium, you got to see our Experience Center, where we have some amazing products in an amazing setting. And check out the Kitchen Design Center up in Hunt Valley. Thanks again for coming along for the ride. We look forward to seeing you soon.